The topic today is the relationship between the freedom of speech and the litigation that has been launched against not only not only against Kataria, Harish Sahani, Satya, and 100 John Does yet to be named. Indeed, if Kataria and Sahani had not fought and Satya had decided to join them, it would be only a matter of time before they would have, as Dr. Cooker pointed out, included all those who were opposing the present dispensation in our country. All those who are likely to be opponents of Ms. Sonia Gandhi. Of course, opponents here. I'm ready to oppose her all the time, but she doesn't want to take me to court because I don't need lawyers. I argue myself. And I use the court as a forum to argue the points that I've been saying in public. But because she thinks that you are busy people, you don't like the harassment of going to court, you don't want to waste your time on these peripheral matters, and going to court and sitting there for the day is a big harassment, and therefore you would surrender, and having surrendered, you would be an example for others, and the others would say, look what happened to these people, we don't want to get into this, better we keep our silence, let them loot the country, let them ruin the country. What we are sitting here in America, why should we oppose it? Let me remind you, the overseas Indians, particularly in the United States, played a major role in the restoration of democracy in the emergency. I had come here to argue the same question people used to ask us. We'll be targeted. Our passports will be cancelled. What is it that we can do here when you can't do it in India? I said, you have the freedom here to speak. Exercise it. It will develop its own momentum. And in the end, Mrs. Gandhi herself told me later on when she was re-elected in 1980, and she wanted a favor from me in dealing with China. At that time, I was chit-chatting with her and asked her about the emergency, and asked her, why did you do this foolish thing of declaring an election which defeated you? She said, the campaign let loose by the Indians abroad had spoiled my name all over the world, and that I could not continue forever without an election. That's why I did it. So the credit goes to you overseas Indians for the democracy, and today that same democracy is being threatened here. The connection between the freedom of speech and the Overseas Congress filing a defamation suit has been established by precedents in the American law. After all, what Sahni did was and his friends did, what Kataria did and others did, was to cooperate with people like Satya to put an ad in the New York Times. What has this got to do with freedom of speech? After all, you did exercise your freedom of speech by putting an ad. And now you're being made accountable for it. How does freedom of speech get threatened because somebody files a suit? A question can be asked. This precise question was raised in 1964 when the New York Times published an ad, like in this case, an ad about civil rights abuses in Alabama, and particularly targeting the police commissioner of the capital of Alabama. And that police commissioner went and filed a suit in the lower courts. And he claimed damages of $10 million. Those days, $10 million is probably more than $100 million today. The lower courts gave him the order, imposed the cost on New York Times of $10 million. They went and appealed to the state Supreme Court. State Supreme Court said, no, you have to pay. So they went to the Supreme Court finally and became the most classic and the most fundamental of cases called the New York Times versus the state of Alabama, the police commissioner of the state of Alabama. And this case is now laid the foundation for how to deal with defamation suits in the United States. In that, the Supreme Court said that publishing an advertisement against the public official is only defamatory if the public official first proves that what is stated there is false, first. Second, the public official also proves that the New York Times knew it was false and yet published it. And three, that despite the fact that the people, the defendants, knew it was false and yet in reckless disregard of the truth went and nevertheless published it. Now they asked the police commissioner, can you prove that? So therefore the case they set aside and said, go back to the court and start all over again and prove that the New York Times advertisement was false. This of course the police commissioner couldn't do. Subsequently, this New York Times standard, which is called actual malice, it is a technical term, but don't you confuse it with the dictionary meaning of malice. Actual malice means knowing something to be false, in utter disregard of the truth, nevertheless publishing it. That is called actual malice. New York Times, after the New York Times judgment, the Supreme Court in a number of cases has extended the concept of public official to public figure, basketball player, public figure, lawyer appearing in a public case, public figure. You can even slander a lawyer, provided you can show that the occasion was a public occasion. So a number of, it's been widened and widened and widened, and Sonia Gandhi comes in the category of a public figure without any doubt. And therefore, if this case has to be at all won, leave aside all the technical points very validly raised by Daya. If even those technical points are set aside, if the case goes on, Sonia Gandhi has to prove by herself coming on the witness box, has to prove that whatever was written in that New York Times advertisement was not only false, but all those John Does knew it was false and yet they went and published it. Can she prove it? This is what the New York Times said. At the pain of litigation, at the pain of being sued for what you speak, if public figures are allowed to go to court and sue for defamation, then it will have a chilling effect on public debate. And democracy runs on public debate. Why are they making a separate category for public officials? In the case of a private person, if he files for defamation, the other side has to prove. The onus is on the other side. If it is a public person, the onus comes on you. Why? Why this reversal of the burden of proof? The reversal is because a public person can call a press conference and say, this is a lie. I challenge the defendants to prove it. Sonia Gandhi could have held a press conference and challenged Mr. Kataria and his friends to prove, saying this is false because of the following reasons. All the things that are said there, I'll go over it in a minute, every one of them has been taken from written records, and the lawyers for Mr. Kataria and others have in their answer in their reply to their original petition, have indeed documented how they have taken it from public record, which has so far not been contradicted. So the connection is that if you impose the pain of litigation in a matter in a public domain, then that has a chilling effect on the debate in the country, and therefore it is a violation of the freedom of speech, and therefore a single case like this Kataria case is one that will affect your freedom of speech in the end. It will let loose a feeling which will chill further incentive to debate and discuss. And that is why it is centrally related, and this topic that you have chosen today is the most appropriate topic. This is not a case of Mr. Kataria fighting and you are standing by him because you know him. This is a case for all of us. It is a case of your freedom of speech. It's a case that in future you can live in this country, even though you live far away from India, you can live here without fear of the long arm of the Indian government coming and strangling your opinion. Now, I want to know, you may want to know what the charges are. These charges, they have quoted me. Strictly speaking, they should have sued me. I was itching that they would sue me, but I was not sued. Because I know how to handle this. Once Ramakrishna Hegde filed a 5 crore defamation suit, a 50 crore defamation suit against me. And I made his life so miserable that finally we withdrew the case. Many, many cases have been filed against me, and that's why finally all lawyers got together and told me, why don't you write a book? I said, I have no time to write a book, but I'll write an article. And if you go to Google and say under my name, you'll see how to fight a defamation case. Against public figures today in the United States, it's impossible to be sued because the United States New York standard has made it impossible. But in this case, you not only does she have to prove that what you said is false and show that you knew it is false, she will end up in cross-examination admitting that all this is true. Don't you think that we have a right in this country to know the antecedents, for us to know the antecedents of our leaders in our country? You have a right. Sonia Gandhi, is that her real name?